Morning. It is Sunday, May the 4th. I'm Ali Velshi, and I want to talk to you for a moment about what was possibly the first viral moment in American history. Now, this was centuries before the existence of X or Instagram or TikTok, centuries before the internet or the computer. Back when the word viral referred to a contagious disease like smallpox, there was something that wasn't a disease that went viral in America. I'm talking about Thomas Paine's pamphlet called Common Sense. It was 47 pages long, so more of a short book than a pamphlet as we think of them today. In the 18th century, it was the equivalent of a paperback book. It sold an estimated 120,000 copies in its first 3 months. 120,000 copies. And by the end of the Revolutionary War, an estimated 500,000 copies were in circulation throughout the colonies. Common sense spread by word of mouth and by influence. Thomas Paine was, in fact, one of the first influencers in American history. But common sense did not sell a product to the American people. Rather, it was peddling an idea. The idea that maybe, just maybe, being ruled by the British king was not in America's best interest. This was a radical idea at a precarious time. In January of 1776, most American colonists pined for the prospect of breaking free from British rule, but independence itself was unthinkable at the time. So Thomas Paine, a recent English immigrant who found a job as a journalist in Philadelphia, took it upon himself to write this long pamphlet in which he made a passionate argument against the injustice of being ruled by a king. This was literally revolutionary because the government of the American colonies was Great Britain. And in his radical condemnation of monarchy, Paine was definitely spreading ideas that were contrary to the priorities of that government, namely its elimination. Now, if that is not dissent in its highest form, I don't know what is. Thomas Paine's Common Sense shifted American sentiment toward independence. He was neither the first nor the only American colonist to object to British rule, but his act of articulate and forceful dissent helped to jumpstart the revolution and the birth of America. Dissent, literally a difference of opinion, is fully baked into the foundations of this great nation. This country was founded as a protest against British tyranny. Political dissent led to the open rebellion that created the United States. And because of that, dissent is not only recognized in America, it is cherished. American democracy as we know it and as we try to hold on to it would not exist without dissent and the protest in which dissent, an idea, manifests into action. Women have the right to vote because of protests against the government's rule that they couldn't vote. Slavery was abolished because of a protest against government-sanctioned policies that allowed for holding humans in bondage. Segregation and Jim Crow laws were dismantled because of many, many protests against government-sponsored institutionalized racism. In fact, so many of the values and the freedoms that make America great all came to be because someone somewhere said of some policy or way of doing things, this is not right. This is broken. This is not fair. This is not working. And whether the government likes it or not, I do not agree. And that is what makes America great. The fact that each and every one of us has the power and the right and the responsibility to speak up against the imperfections of this nation. But what is superpower to a citizen is kryptonite to the oppressor. And so the effective oppressor will always try to find a way to stifle criticism and dissent. And part of that is done through the stifling of speech and the discouraging of dissent. In the authoritarian playbook, speech is not free if it goes against the regime. In America today, dissent is being openly punished. International students with visas and green cards lawfully living and studying in this country are being arrested, jailed, and threatened with deportation because of political positions that they have taken or, according to the Secretary of State, that they may one day take that are at odds with the views of the Trump administration. Some of the most respected universities in this country are being punished and stripped of critical funding because they are not ideologically aligned with the president, or they don't force their students and faculty to be. Private law firms are being targeted with executive orders for taking up cases that the administration opposes or representing clients who are out of favor with the government. Books that the government doesn't like are being challenged, removed, and banned in record numbers. Museums are losing funding. History the government doesn't want you to learn is literally being erased. The Trump administration has excuses for why this is all happening, but none of them include an admission or an acknowledgement that American rights are actually being suppressed and that free thought is being punished if those thoughts are at odds with those of the administration. This is not normal, at least not in a democracy. Dissent is so steeped in the foundations of this country that we use our founding document, the U.S. Constitution, to legitimize the protests that have defined American democracy. The 13th Amendment is a short form for the abolition of slavery. The 19th Amendment reads, quote, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." The 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18. This was a direct result of dissent and protest during the Vietnam War, when young Americans felt disenfranchised and demanded a voice in their government. As Thomas Paine wrote, government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one. Our government right now is in its worst state. You may not feel the need for dissent, but you're going to want to preserve and protect it, because it's just common sense. In a world where dissent is being punished and executive power is being abused, democracy depends on checks and balances. And it's becoming incredibly evident that the judiciary may be our last defense. But it seems the administration is well aware of this, and it's making it harder and harder for the judiciary to do its job and to defend democracy. So for more on that, I'm joined by someone central to this discussion, a man who used his position and his authority to stand up for democracy. Judge J. Michael Luttig is a former federal judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. Judge Luttig, it's always an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for being with us again.
Thank you, Ali. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
I want to start with something President Trump told my colleague Kristen Welker this morning on Meet the Press. Let's listen together.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says.
I don't know. It seems it might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. But some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Judge, that is some mind-boggling stuff. The answer to a simple question, do you have to uphold the Constitution? The answer was, I don't know.
Correct, Ali. And I'm just hearing that interview right this moment. The temptation will be to dismiss that statement by the president as just one more gaffe, if you will. But I'm quite confident that it's not a gaffe at all, and it is instead a considered statement by the President of the United States, even if jarring and even if awkwardly formulated, for this reason. There has long been a strain of constitutional conservatism that believes that the Constitution is what the Constitution says, and it is not what the Supreme Court says the Constitution says. There's no question in my mind that the President of the United States and his Vice President are of that school of constitutional denialism, if you will. We have already seen the statements to this effect by both the president, including today, and the vice president formerly. Remember, it was months ago now that the vice President, provocatively teased the idea that the Constitution is not what the Supreme Court says, but rather what the Constitution itself says, all but saying explicitly that he and the president do not believe that the Constitution is what the Supreme Court says. I'm sure that the White House will scramble to walk back the president's statement today. I would frankly like to see the president stand his ground and articulate even more clearly and forcefully what he actually believes. And that is what I said